Good start. Good morning, everyone from the UK. This is Peter Jones. There was a recent survey that took place in a Facebook group, Collaborative Leaders. It's not a big group, a small group, 100 or so people in it. But we did a survey on what people would like to see the group do next. And the top of that poll was education in Africa. 13 votes, as I say, not a big community. So what I want to talk about today is education, and these are the subjects we're going to cover. First of all, early stages education. What can be done, what can't be done in each case. Then we're going to talk about adult education. What we've done so far, what we still need. After that, we're going to talk about why people will undertake education. That's not often straightforward. The biggest problem with education is in Africa is actually web access. So then we'll talk about that. Some of the things that we can do are get help from an educational perspective. And there are different ways that can be brought into Africa. We'll talk about those. One of them is people in the crypto communities, also WhatsApp groups. We'll go into crypto communities in a little bit more detail about how that could work. And ultimately, we'll talk about what we need immediately from here, what next steps we can take. So let's make a start. Early stages education in Africa, from our group's perspective, early stages education is a special example of education because in most cases with education, it's about storytelling and about exercises to make sure people understand the education that's taken place. You can talk to people all you like, but if you don't give them exercises, they don't do the exercises, they don't practice the learning that they've heard, then typically it's just someone talking. You have to do it for yourself to actually learn. So that's why people give exercises, and that's why they ask people to do the exercises so that the learning is properly embedded. Now, for your very young children, that means simplifying the story. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain what you're doing to a 6-year-old, you probably actually don't properly understand it yourself. Very clever guy, Einstein. But the point there is that it actually takes a lot of work to translate stuff that we do in everyday life so that a child can understand it. Parents will understand this to some extent, especially if you've been on the whole journey. So there's early stage teaching, early stage learning is a very specialist skill. If you think about sending your kids to school, everything has to be simplified in ways that that a very young child can understand. Luckily, young children are 100% geared towards learning. So, if teachers try with young children, then there's a good chance that they will be able to succeed. However, from an education perspective, you need people who are specialists in that area. We don't have any. So that's one aspect. We are very open to talking to people who are early stage learning experts. Very happy to collaborate, 100%. The other side of it is that repurposed content is important because there's a heck of a lot of stuff on the internet, but it needs repurposing. We need to add exercises to the content that's on the internet that are doable So people, let's say regenerative agriculture, people can take the example, go out into the field, try what they've seen. I saw a really good example on dry wall damming the other day, sand wall damming the other day. But obviously, that's something where we need to put an example together where people can go, okay, how does that work? Where do we go and put the dam? Those kinds of questions. So it's not, yes, it's a great possibility, but it needs something more to be something that is truly educational content. So neither of those two things are possible right now. We don't have an early stage learning expert, and we are not very easily able to repurpose content for consumption by Africans. So at the moment, that's something that we can't address. Something that we can address is adult education. We've talked to various people in Africa. We've produced 2 courses. I think actually we've produced 3 courses, but 2 of them I know about and understand. But what we need there are online teachers, people who can deliver those courses and support them. It is possible that there's typically a limit to what I can do. So I need people to come and help. If people with those kinds of skills want to come and help, that would be absolutely wonderful. We are exploring different technical options, and for example, Facebook Live here, this session, is certainly an example where I think we can start to repurpose content and deliver it in ways that people will be interested and want to listen. Now, I think what we've discovered with our 2 courses is that we need people to see the benefits. We need to be able to say to them, here's the learning, here's what you can get out of that. It's a long-term exercise. There aren't really sort of quick returns with education. If you think about childhood education, it's a very long process. It starts when you're a child and finishes when you're a teenager. And, you know, that's all about the future. It's not really the exercise itself. It's all about what can you do with that learning in the future. So some people in certain circumstances in Africa need fast returns. And that's something that we do need to work on to make sure that people can get some returns from the learning that they engage in. Otherwise, they begin to say, oh, well, okay, I did that learning, but why? Why did I do that? What did I get from it? So that's something that's that needs to have more work on it, for sure. So just the subject of web access, that's very difficult in Africa. It's certainly in rural Africa, easier in the cities. Anywhere that's got good Wi-Fi, fantastic. You know, I think we look at Canon in Burundi. He has to go and travel to find a good area for reception, and bless him, he does. You know, he's very willing and very resourceful. So you know, but that's a big issue, having proper web access. There is a huge amount of web content. There's a lot more than is just what's on Facebook. Yes, there's a lot of stuff on Facebook, but there's a lot more beyond that. And Facebook has limitations. It's not the best environment for folk to learn in necessarily, and it's very difficult to talk to people directly, person to person. So there are some limitations there. And in learning situations, that person to person support is really important. You know, there are some people who are able to learn for themselves, who they're called autodidacts. But there are a lot of other people who need support. They have questions. I always have lots of questions. I'm always asking questions. So you need people willing to support, who can provide answers to questions or provide directions, roadmaps, signposting. So that's a really important thing. Facebook is great, but it can't do everything. And ideally, in order for that web access to be manifested, to become much more real and much more widespread even across rural Africa, we need much better solar power and mesh web. And that's something that takes investment, and it's not something that is widespread at the moment, certainly across rural Africa. It's getting better, but it's not widespread. So why have I been looking at crypto buddies as a means of supporting education in Africa? Well, certainly one thing crypto buddies can help with is content repurposing. And it can also be web buddies. It doesn't have to be necessarily crypto buddies. It's just that crypto buddies are quite understanding of the need to spread technology more widely. So there's kind of a more open door talking to crypto buddies. But say, for example, in just straightforward web access, WhatsApp is a genuine opportunity, I believe. There's work to be done to turn it into a proper opportunity, but it is a learning opportunity. Now, that's kind of one aspect. We can even look at WhatsApp groups as a possibility for content gaming. Now, that's another plan that I'd love to try and push forward. Again, if I can have people to work with, it's going to help enormously. I have one pair of hands. I can't do everything myself. There's a lot of stuff that we're trying to do. In terms of that exercise of making content gaming a thing in WhatsApp groups, then that's a function and a facility that needs building. I'm really not going to be able to do that just on my own. So, a little bit more detail about crypto communities. Proposals are very central to crypto communities. It's about putting a proposal together that harmonizes. That's a good word. Harmonizes our objectives. So what we're trying to do in PrinterNet affiliates harmonizes those objectives with the objectives of that crypto community. So, for example, there are crypto communities I know who are very interested in Africa. That's not a bad place to start. It's not a full harmonization necessarily, but it is something that we can work towards. There are other communities who do seed programs. So they provide seeds to rural African communities. Another good place to start. Some of those communities are huge, and therefore it's difficult to find the right places to try to start that harmonizing process. And typically, they may well want to see revenue streams. In other words, if there are learning opportunities arising from web and solar, then that's something that people can charge for. So there's a revenue stream, and there can be repayment for any investment. Now, as far as the seeds communities are concerned, again, people at that point would be producing food, and that's a revenue stream, and therefore there's an opportunity to repay any investment that has taken place. So what we want to do from all of this is typically to search for educators and leaders that are heading towards our identified and harmonised goals. And what we're trying to do is build working relationships with those who are on parallel journeys. They may be not quite joined journeys, but they might be on parallel journeys, and with a small amount of movement, it can become a joined journey. So that's our call to action. and hopefully that's an understanding of where we are in terms of education in rural Africa. Thank you very much.
I don't know if she needs a bath or not, so if she doesn't have to do that, take time.